All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Granary Burying Ground, Resting Place of the Revolutionaries, History Traveler, episode 263. Click that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. That helps out tremendously. You can donate to the channel through the thanks button, just like that. Request a video, your name's sponsoring that video. You don't have to donate, still request. Just takes a little bit longer to get to. Okay? So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, over the past few days, we've been on a quick trip to Boston, Massachusetts, looking at some of the history connected to the American Revolution around here. And if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know that one of the things that we really like to do is to visit cemeteries. These are places where we can, learn about history and connect with the past. Well, I couldn't come to Boston without visiting this place right here. This is the Granary Burying Ground, and it contains the final resting place of some of the most prominent historic figures in American history. Now, if you want to talk about an old cemetery, this is an old cemetery. The Granary Burying Ground was established in 1660, and it gets its name because there was a small building close by that used to store grain here. But there are, if you look, about 2,345 headstones in here. Most of them are slate, and I've already looked at a few, and boy, they are kind of hard to read, so we might be struggling a bit today. But even though there are 2,345 headstones here, it's estimated that there are actually about 5,000 people who are buried in this small site, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. So anyway, a lot of prominent Bostonians here, prominent Americans. So we're going to take a look and see what we can find here in this small but crowded cemetery. A famous American whose name you might recognize was born right here in Boston, Benjamin Franklin. But this is not the grave of Benjamin Franklin. He actually moved away from Boston when he was 16 years old. I think he had worked in his brother's printing business, and they weren't getting along too well, so he moved to Philadelphia and pretty much lived the rest of his life out there. But this is the grave of Benjamin Franklin's parents. So this 25-foot obelisk marks the spot where they are buried here in this cemetery. And there's this plaque up here with words that were written by Benjamin Franklin to honor his mother and father, Josiah Franklin and Abiah. Anyway, I won't read the whole thing, but it talks about how they were married for 55 years and lived a humble life, had 13 children and 7 grandchildren, and it ends saying he was a pious and prudent man, and she a discreet and virtuous woman. And then the original marker, I think, was falling into disrepair, so it was replaced with this one here. But yeah, there's the final resting place of Benjamin Franklin.
Why do people put pennies on the Franklin grave? He's on the $100 bill, people. Show some respect. Throw down hundos. And before you do, let me know when you're going to, because I'm going to show up and just make sure that it's still there.
Franklin's parents. Well, here is the grave of the original troublemaker himself, Samuel Adams. If it weren't for this guy, it's questionable whether we would have a country or not, or maybe we would, but he was certainly instrumental in bringing it about. So something that people may not know, he was actually a second cousin to President John Adams, and was very instrumental in protesting, against the British and protesting taxes, things like that. He'd actually served as a tax collector for a little bit, but was really bad at his job because he didn't collect taxes. But anyway, he went on to serve in the Continental Congress and was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. And there's a quote that he has at the Continental Congress in Philadelphia in 1776 that I love. He says, "If ye love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel, nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains set lightly about you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen." So old Sam Adams, he was something else, and is buried right here next to the victims of the Boston Massacre in the Granary burying ground. In an earlier episode, we were showing the site where the Boston Massacre took place. Well, right here is the final resting place of the 5 men who were killed in the Boston Massacre. So here it says the remains of Samuel Gray, Samuel Maverick, James Caldwell, Crispus Attucks, and Patrick Carr, victims of the Boston Massacre, March 5th, 1770, were here interred by the order of the town of Boston. So, of course, Crispus Attucks was an Afro-Indigenous man who was the first person who was killed in the Boston Massacre. And then Caldwell, I'm sorry, Maverick and Carr were mortally wounded and ended up dying of their wounds later. And here, if you look, it also says, here also lies buried the body of Christopher Snyder, aged 12 years, killed February 12, 1770. The innocent first victim of the struggles between the colonists and the crown, which resulted in independence. Huh. Interesting. Well, there you are. Those are the final resting places. This is the final resting place of the victims of the Boston Massacre. Here we have another famous patriot. This is the grave of Robert Treat Paine, who, as you can see, was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. He was a native of Boston, had graduated Harvard, and was originally in the ministry, and I think was a chaplain in the French and Indian War, if I remember correctly, and then ended up studying law. In a previous episode, we talked about the Boston Massacre. Well, Paine was the lawyer who served on the prosecution for the soldiers who were involved in the Boston Massacre. And in addition to signing the Declaration of Independence, he was also a member of the Second Continental Congress. And yeah, he's buried right here. Well, here in Boston, there was a resident by the name of Isaac Goose. And the gravestone that we are looking at right now, it's hard to read, but it says, here lies the body of Mary Goose, wife to Isaac Goose. So Mary Goose was the first wife of Isaac. She had 10 kids, and then Isaac remarried a woman named Elizabeth, and she had 10 kids. And now this story may or may not be true, but it's thought that the inspiration for Mother Goose came from Elizabeth Goose, who raised 20 kids. Her son-in-law was a guy by the name of Thomas Fleet. As a matter of fact, here's his headstone right here. He was a local publisher and printer. And anyway, he had published a book of stories titled Songs for the Nursery or Mother Goose's Melodies. Now, like I said, this may or may not be true. There was supposedly a Mother Goose character in England before Elizabeth's birth. But yeah, kind of an interesting story. But some of these headstones are so fascinating to me. So here we see one, and if you look at the date says 1666. So I think this is one of the oldest, I don't think it's the oldest, but it's one of the oldest headstones in this cemetery. And you have this winged death's head signifying the soul that is ascending to heaven. And if you look here in Latin, it says Tempus Edax Rerum, which means time, devourer of all things. And then if you look, there are some other etchings in here. There's a crossbones, an hourglass signifying that our time is limited, and then 2 crossed shovels. Very fascinating. Well, here's the grave of another patron. Very fascinating.
Andrew Neal, aged 18 months. So, snow flurries. 18 months. This is aged 2 weeks. Wow. Aged 3 days. Wow. Wow.
Well, here's the grave of another patriot here from Boston by the name of James Otis. So if we look at this marker here, it says, "Here lies buried James Otis, orator and patriot of the Revolution, famous for his argument against writs of assistance." So James Otis was a Harvard-educated lawyer, and the writs of assistance were something that the British had. It was like an open-ended search warrant where they could go through people's private property searching for illegal goods without like what we would consider just cause or judicial review today. But Otis ended up being very, very influential with his pamphlets and with his writings during the Revolution. He kind of started suffering from some mental illness. There was one incident where he went and broke out all of the windows of the old State House, and there was a fight that occurred at a place called the British Coffee House that he was severely injured in and never really recovered from. Something interesting about Otis, he had always predicted that he would die by being lightning struck, and I'll be dadgum if that didn't happen to him in May of 1783.
That should teach any one of you to go out during a thunderstorm wearing your metal hat with a long antenna. Don't do that. He proves the point why.
Here's the grave of John Hancock, first signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a very successful businessman here in Boston. As a matter of fact, he was one of the richest Bostonians of his time. And he was into shipping, and he had a ship that he had called the Liberty that was involved in some smuggling, so the British just took it. And he ended up becoming very involved with the Sons of Liberty and was a close associate of Samuel Adams. And as president of the Second Continental Congress, he was the first to sign the Declaration of Independence. And he said that he was going to sign his name large enough to where King George could read it without using his reading glasses. He was also the first state governor of the state of Massachusetts. So here's something else that I wanted to point out. In front of John Hancock's grave is the grave of an individual named Frank, servant to John Hancock. It says, lies interred here, who died 23rd of January, 1771. I think we're going to end our visit here with arguably the most well-known figure in this cemetery, Paul Revere. So Paul Revere was a silversmith here in Boston, and just in brief, you can look up more on Paul Revere if you don't know a whole lot about him. But Paul Revere was one of the leaders of the Sons of Liberty here in Boston. And if you've ever opened up a school textbook and looked up the Boston Massacre, you've probably seen Paul Revere's engraving. It was one of the most widely circulated and influential depictions of the Boston Massacre, even if it isn't, exactly accurate. Paul Revere was also a leading element in the organization of the Boston Tea Party. And after the Boston Tea Party, with just a few hours sleep, it's Revere who carried the news of the Boston Tea Party to New York and Philadelphia. And then what he is probably most well known for is his midnight ride in April of 1775, when he went to warn the countryside of the British soldiers who were getting ready to march on Concord. And if you look down here, there's a smaller headstone that just simply says Revere's tomb. And then next to it, you see the marker. It says Boston Tea Party participant. Yeah. Pretty cool. Final resting place of one of the most famous Americans in all of American history, Paul Revere. All right, well, there you go. When it comes to historic American cemeteries, I don't know if it gets any more historic than this place right here. But that was just a little bit right here in Boston at the Granary Burying Ground.
Okay. Wasn't. Come on. There you go. Well, that was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Paul Revere. It's hard to be an American and not know him, although the story isn't exactly true. He didn't ride the greatest distance. He just, I believe there was whoever told the tale. I think his name was catchier, so he gets credit for the ride over others. Not trying to take away from him. He still did a lot. Okay. Well, we're going to end this here. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night.